It's high noon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of High Noon Podcast. This, of course, is another part of our Overwatch League Talent interview series. Joining me today is Deathblow and the man, the myth, the legend himself, Uber Shouts. What's up, buddy? Welcome back.
Hey, fam, what's up? I haven't seen you guys since New York. I'm good. I'm just starting to enjoy my 6-week break. So
Yeah, it's like high school all over again. You just get to, you work way too much, and then you get a bunch of time off.
yeah, so I said now I have to pay for everything. That's the you
Yeah.
just have to pay for everything. And then I gotta go and get groceries and wash my underwear. So not quite as good, but close.
Yeah, it's well, and yeah, you're. And I'm sure your mom's probably not there, so that's unfortunate too. But I know if I was in the Overwatch League in some capacity, my mom would definitely be there doing all that stuff for me. I know that for sure. But enough about me. Let's just jump right into this. And Uber, first off, thanks for being here. And we're just going to start this off like we start all of these interviews. And I want to know, what is the esports or gaming origin stories for Uber?
Well, I didn't start gaming until I was like 16, I think. I lived in the countryside. So, well, I guess that's 14, I would say. We had a computer, but like online games was not really an option because we had dial-up, man. Like that was how it was. Mum would use the phone and I'd hear her scream at me, like connecting it. I think I had an hour a day that I was allowed to be on the internet, and I just like played Unreal Tournament, Game of the Year edition. And I was in random lobbies with like 200 ping because I was playing from Australia, but I didn't care. Yeah, I got into Call of Duty 4 with a bunch of friends, and then sort of spent the next 3 years grinding that out for ages, like during high school, and got to the point eventually where I was probably like a bad player on a top team, like on an invite level team. So I played a bunch of COD 4. But a uni rolled around and I was studying engineering, so I didn't have 40 hours a week free to just like play COD because we were literally, that was what the grind was like. It was like DM and we were just scrimming all the time. So which is a really fun ecosystem to be in, but yeah, it chewed up all of my free time. So I stopped that, stopped playing competitively at that point, but I just started to pick up casting randomly because a friend of mine, a teammate, was like, yeah, I'm on this online radio show and we sort of do casting, and I'm like, I don't know what that is. Like, I had no idea about it, and I just did it. I did it because I kind of still wanted to be involved in the community and get there. But yeah, I think my initial sort of entry to gaming was like Pokemon Red on the Game Boy when I was 5 years old. I love Pokemon. I still do. That shit is fucking so good. So I still play all the new releases, and I love the old Dragon Quest games. I had my favorite game of all time was Dragon Quest Monsters. And I came across it because back in the day, you used to get these cartridges for your Game Boy that was like 100 games in one or something like that.
Yeah.
And had like all these random shit games, and they had like DQM on there, and I played it. And for those that don't sort of know what it's like it's kind of Pokemon-esque, a little bit more of like, it's a little bit less light and fluffy, but you go around and you fight monsters, kind of in the Final Fantasy aspect. You try and convince them to join your party. You can also breed them together and, produce new monsters and stuff. So that just had me by the balls. I love that game so much. So I grew up loving that RPG style kind of game until I really got into shooters with Unreal Tournament, which just happened to be on my PC. And from there, I was like, yeah, this is definitely my preferred genre for sure.
I remember playing, I think it was DQM. That's the one with like the slimes and the king slime and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had that game as a
real
kid
like
too.
back when you're like, you're like walking through portals and you're going, it's like kind of like dungeons and there's kind of like bosses at the end of it. And then like every boss just shits on you the first time you play against them. Like the difficulty curve was like Dark Souls level. But when you were a kid, like you don't know anything else, right? Like I just playing. So.
Blevins, I think this is the first time you've identified with somebody's origin story, and I haven't. Like, it's always been World of Warcraft and
Right.
Blevins is like, I don't know. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I love WoW. I play, you
Yeah.
know, but yeah, this is the first time this has gone in the Blevins realm.
I honestly like never played many MMOs. Like, okay, so you remember like obviously just before BFA came out, right? And that whole area got wrecked by the Horde because they were invading whatever Darkshore, right? When I went back there, I had this faint memory that I hadn't recalled of being like 16 and walking, you know, down Darkshore as a night elf when I was like level 20. I just started playing the game, and I didn't remember it until I like remembered like Orbidine and some of the names of the places, which was a crazy throwback for me. But I didn't play MMOs until I was like much older. I guess I played a little bit of RuneScape like everyone did when it first came out, and I got addicted to that as well. But I think it was the subscription-based nature of the game was like my mother was never going to fund my gaming edition. It's not like she didn't prevent me from doing it. She didn't actively block me. But if I'm out there saying, "Mom, can you give me $20 a month for this?" She's like, "Get the fuck out! I'm not doing that." So I didn't play MMOs until I was old enough to afford them, and then I was too deep into Call of Duty 4 and stuff like that. Anyway.
Yeah, definitely can relate to that for sure. I wasn't anywhere near getting a monthly subscription for something like that, let alone a computer that could run World of Warcraft when I lived with my parents. But you mentioned you went to university at one point and were studying what I'm assuming wasn't shoutcasting, because that's not really, or at least wasn't really a thing you could be studying. So what would Uber be doing now if you weren't a Greenwall caster?
I actually graduated from aerospace engineering degree with I don't, we call it first class honors. You guys call it summa cum laude over here, but I don't know if it's quite the same thing. Just like the grades were good, right? It's hard to say because I sort of left the engineering field and worked in like a sales job to try and have that spare time to do casting on the side, because I had an inkling at the time that it could have resulted in something. But at the time I was hurtling pretty quickly towards an internship at British Aerospace, and I probably wouldn't have enough have been just like a avionics engineer, or I think my dream was to work at SpaceX at that age.
Oh, nice.
Something to do with aerospace and just innovations when it comes to space travel. The prospect of interstellar sort of colonization for me was just like it still is like one of the things that really captures my imagination. And like every one of those shit movies, like the Martian, like Interstellar, like all those space movies, like you can't go to the cinemas with me when you're watching, because I sit there like, well, that's not possible. You can't have a storm on Mars. There's no atmosphere. You can't have pressure fluctuations without an atmosphere. Like, what the fuck is this? So I'm super.
You're that guy.
Yeah. Like there's like games like Surviving Mars, and like I love games like Stellaris, and I'm playing. I literally just got off a long session of No Man's Sky. I was playing that all morning because they beefed that game up a little bit with some more fun stuff. So that stuff is just my jam. So I would have done that. I would have been an engineer probably.
So you literally would have been Dr. Winston from Overwatch.
Yeah. Yes, except without the gains. I don't know how you still with the peanut butter fetish though.
Yeah. Of course. But so obviously, speaking of Overwatch, that's going to be the main topic for those of you who weren't sure here. How did you go from playing Unreal Tournament on dial-up into Call of Duty, and then how did you eventually get into Overwatch and find out about Overwatch?
So I mean, the Unreal Tournament thing was just kind of casual. Like, I love to create my own games and fill it with bots and just like go and shoot them. And I later realized that was like the way of training. But in Unreal Tournament, you could there was no scope spread, so everyone just ran around with snipers, and like you could just tap people's heads, which is much like McCree is now, which I think is why I was so attracted to him as a hero. But yeah. I think COD 4 taught me just how fun it is to have a team of people sort of competing for the same goal, and the rigors of scrimming and stuff like that. And when Overwatch came around, I was extremely excited for it because it combined. Because I spent a lot of time playing and casting League of Legends after my stint in Overwatch. In COD 4. So obviously the mashup of the two genres that at the time. I think when Overwatch was announced, no one was really doing, battle arenas in that sense. And then like every motherfucker started producing them. But I thought I guess what got me into it so much was that like there still seemed to be an evident FPS element there. Although maybe that has changed recently, perhaps. There was still like the alts, the concept of alts and sort of, team comps and setting that sort of stuff up there. So, I mean, when it was announced, I was probably still, what was I doing? was probably casting World of Tanks at the time. So I was like, well, anything's better than this. But
shots fired,
but,
literally from a
Rip
tank.
World of Tanks.
yeah. But I was like, well, I mean, yeah, this might be like a good option for me in the future. And, obviously been working at ESL at the time, like that we kind of already had networks there. And, we were looked at as a place that, typically produces world-class commentary talent. So it was I was in a good place. It just seemed like a right place, right time thing when that came around.
So it wasn't really a hard decision to go from something like World of Tanks to Overwatch. It was like, I actively want to go into Overwatch.
World of Tanks is such a small scene. I actually think the game got much better at the end of my casting stint with it. Like when the last World Championships of World of Tanks that I cast with my co-commentator Oliver, it was actually really good, except one guy's tank got stuck and it cost his team the whole championship. So it was like, this is still substandard hashtag esports ready. But I moved into Counter-Strike casting as well, and I did a lot of League of Legends casting, which many people may not remember because it was fairly obscure. I did do a couple of Intel Extreme Masters events. I think I cast a bunch of Papa Smithy. I did cast with Frosker, and probably my favorite game was casting a IEM Katowice semifinal with Crepo and Deficio. That was quite good. So I did a bunch of league casting, but never really took to it. I think there are many elements of the casting that I enjoyed, and then some that I didn't. And I was casting CS at the same time. So both games I was decent in, and I think I could have, if I'd ground out a few more years in each of those games, like I would have been able to be a top talent. I actually turned down a position at Riot to come to cast Overwatch. So they, at that time, were wanting to bring me into the LCS fold, and I declined them to do the Overwatch League. So that's where I'd gotten with my league casting. You know what I mean? I'd managed to sort of get to that point. And Counter-Strike, like I have a great relationship with the guys, and I was the same. I was, on the cusp of breaking from as a tier 2 caster in that game as well. But I mean, the temptation to kind of start something new would be part of something that I like believed in based on like the core ethos and visions of the game, and the development team was like, I mean, it's much nicer to be part of something new and then help elevate that than to come into something and just try and ride the popularity of the game,
Yeah, for sure. So how did that initial conversation about joining Overwatch League start? Like, how did you have that conversation?
Well, I think it was working at ESL kind of like allowed me to pretty much just to do that ESL Atlantic Showdown event. Before that, like obviously 6 months before the game came out, me and Jason were producing content, like sort of speculation. We noticed that like you had a lot of guys like, Unit Lost, and you had your Overwatch people that's kicked up their channels just after the game was announced. And, we all were sort of doing the same thing in terms of getting the press pack and basically mining through everything that was available on the internet and trying to sort of distill that down and sort of give people information and generate some hype as part of that. But what those guys were not doing was they weren't looking at it as a competitive esport. And like obviously you don't want to just release a game and then go, let it be an esport in time, whatever. But we weren't trying to propagate the idea that it should have been straight off the bat, but more just what the possibilities were. So a lot of our content separated around competitive viability based on the abilities that we've seen these heroes exhibit, potential team compositions. Jason and I actually predicted, 3 years in advance this quad tank comp that we saw come out, or so like we obviously not knowing who Anna was, so I wasn't a full prediction. So we talked about that stuff and the competitive side of the game and how the game modes would work and what tweaks would need to be to the rule set. So Blizzard really liked that because obviously, we were the only ones sort of doing that, and they encouraged us to sort of continue producing that content. We started the Go For series for ESL, which is like a Sunday tournament that's automated. It's like an automated system. They got a fairly powerful tournament system, so they can do that. And we just started casting those games. And because of our work early on in the title, we worked with AlphaCast, the French commentator, big streamer. So he's like, "Yo, I'm running an Overwatch tournament. Come do the English casting for it." And that was in the first week. I think there was an Overwatch event that happened like the day before, because Fishsticks somehow managed to like do the first, like organize the first Overwatch beta tournament. I'm just like, bro, like the game is literally just ended. But I mean, so I think we did the second one. I think me and Jason did the second official Overwatch tournament casting. But so from there, like you've already established yourself as like an original caster, because you didn't just decide to cast Overwatch when the game came out. We decided to cast Overwatch, 6 months to a year before it came out, and spent that time preparing to cast it. So like, that's we put in time that could have been wasted if the game had been shit,
right?
To establish ourselves as like the forerunners. So obviously we casted Go4s. Eventually ESL signed a deal with Blizzard to run a event at Gamescom, and obviously we work at ESL, like we're right in there. So we're casting the qualifiers. Me, Lee, and Jason. Hex and ZP were also getting involved because there was NA qualifiers as well as EU qualifiers. So we're able to link up with those guys, and many times before the game came out, while it might have seemed like me and Jason were competing with Hex and CP, we were actually working together with them, and like we jumped in a lot of the Alienware monthly melee stuff. So we were extending olive branches to each other and sort of supporting each other, because we recognize, me and Jason recognize the two of those as doing this, trying to do the same thing as we were across the Atlantic. So we respected that. After the Atlantic Showdown, I had a very good performance. I had people from Blizzard sort of start saying like, this is something we'd like you to hang around in. So, they couldn't offer me anything, but they just encourage me to stick to it. And then that first World Cup was my first direct confirmation that I'd be hunted for at our spot. So the inaugural World Cup was when the conversations began.
Nice. That's that's a pretty storied experience for that first stint of Overwatch's existence.
Good insight there for anybody looking to maybe do something similar in the future and get into casting or anything like that. Like, got to start before the game comes out. Like, you've got to be into it and really grinding before you really have an opportunity to reap the rewards from it. But we do want to shift the conversation a little here, Mitch, into the first season itself and your experience going through that inaugural season. Can you tell us what, if any, personal goals you set for the first season, if you feel you met them or maybe fell a little short of those goals?
My goals for season one were, we all talked about this as a group of casters. So, this is how, I guess, a group goal translated into a personal one for me, but we knew we'd had to work our asses off. The time when like this first year especially is going to be like a grind, because we're up against a lot of expectation. There's a lot of work to be done. That preseason was like the awakening. Like, this was hard work because we were casting and then we're on the desk straight after and back and forth. And as the season went on, I think we had obviously the desk developed, and the casters were able to focus on casting. I don't think it'll ever be harder than this first season. And it wasn't even that hard. Like, it wasn't like any of us couldn't handle it. Like, many of us were used to more rigorous schedules, but I think as we go on, like, the whole process is going to become a lot more streamlined. I definitely wanted to be the best, but I wanted to be the best by my sort of standards, and not by like the public standards or by my peers' standards, if that makes any sense. So it was less about being better than my co-workers so I could lord that over them, but sort of looking at the bar that they had set in terms of their ability and internalizing the idea of, sort of exceeding that, I guess, in my own way. So like, it wasn't about like, so the end goal of that is not to say I'm better than these, but the end goal is to say that, like, based on, the standard that I think that our group has set and the standard that I've set, then I've been able to reach that. And there are days that I reached it, and there are days that I fell short of it. And I think that's the reality of being a caster. It's like, I have tried to replicate, like, when I think about a good games that I've had, I've been like, what did I do that day to replicate that? I've done everything to try and sort of create that scenario again, like have half an energy drink before the game, or don't drink an extra drink, or have a shot of coffee or an extra shot, or make sure I have an extra bagel at breakfast, and just all this ridiculous stuff. And I've just not been able to distill what it is that like helps me with my best games. It just kind of happens, because it's not a regimented process casting, right? It's so free flowing. I'm like, I think it has a lot to do with my mood and my personal health, whether it's mental or physical or otherwise. I think it makes like a big difference, but I've not been able to isolate what it is. So my goal was to sort of be my best. And I'm pretty happy with it overall. I would say that like my last the last game that I cast was not my best. I'd say like I love my best. I happen randomly, like stage 1, week 4, and stage 2, week 3, or just randomly here and there. But as frustrating as it is, like I have to accept that is something I'm fairly happy with. So I'm satisfied, but like if I get complacent, like dude, I'm actually afraid of that. Yeah, bro, I'm so afraid of getting complacent. Like literally, it keeps me up at night. Like that's like a one-way ticket to mediocre city, which is like a big fear of mine. So
yeah, I like a lot of what you said there, especially like how it's hard to be really consistent, but the product you get from the teams is really inconsistent. And honestly, my favorite moment of you from the first season was a Shanghai Dragons match. It's we need a lawmaker to deal with the outlaw, but there ain't none left in this town line when Undead was on the McCree there. And it's just, like you said, it just kind of comes to you and it goes a little bit, and it takes, I'm sure the play on the screen and on the stage can really kind of bring that out almost more than anything else. But so when you look at the Overwatch League inaugural season as a whole, were you expecting this to be, I think by all accounts, it was a very big success. We're seeing the expansion teams come in, the price of those teams going up. Did you expect it to be as successful as it was in the first season, or did you maybe expect more growing pains and a little slower growth than 8 teams in season 2?
I thought it would be. I didn't think we'd expand so much for season 2. Like it was like a 80%, 70% sort of expansion rate, which is pretty nice. We all had fairly conservative estimates when we went into this because everyone was trying to be like super realistic, like from even from like the expectations on the organizational side and the corporate side. It's like this is not easy to just break into a scene and become a staple in terms of like esports related entertainment. So I think it exceeded all of our expectations, and I think that exceeding happened when we weren't paying attention. We weren't really looking for it was a grind, and we could only really you could only really assess its relative success like at the end when you're looking back, right? We couldn't. I think at any stage throughout the season, like we were completely out of touch with like how do we determine whether this is going well or not. We're just like, well, like there were some days where like we're packed out. There were some days where it's like, only the floor seats are filled. I think things like that. And how many viewers we got? Oh, that's pretty good considering this is on or whatever. So based on our very conservative estimates, it's been a success. But season 2 will bring, now the estimates will be based on what we actually achieved, like what the actual numbers were, instead of just like an arbitrary number that we keep fairly low just to stay safe. So it will be much more difficult to succeed by the same margin as we did in season 1.
Well, and my last question before I throw back to John here is we like to call your funny phrases and your quirky sayings Uberisms. And I'm curious, are any of these pre-prepared, or are these things that just come to you off the top of your head, or how do you come up with these crazy sayings you have?
So the undead line, for example, never thought about that in my life before I said it. I mean, I think like there was one saying that I can recall being prepared, and the execution of it actually ended up being one of my favorite moments, because the thing is, like, you can come up with an idea of like a saying, but you need an appropriate event to occur in game for the optimal use of that. And one of the biggest challenges, if the casters that do prepare sort of any lines, is that if you don't get an optimal scenario, you can't use it in a suboptimal manner, because you can't ever use it again and it doesn't work. I've done it before. I've done it in the Overwatch League season. Like, I would say like 10% of what I do is maybe sort of, maybe even less than that, sort of thought of. And a lot of it is thought of in like the break, like 30 seconds before we come back. So like, I don't know, like they're the pithiest things. For example, like here's a match between 2 countries known for their breakfast condiments, or when I looked up the top speed of a London like a Spitfire jet to try and make some fucking analogy. Like those are like, honestly, the ones I prepare are my weakest ones. The ones that are sort of organic are good, but it's like you're constantly in fear of like, bro, I could just say something mad inappropriate, or like like I'm Australian as well, so like a lot of the more politically correct culture is not ingrained in us culturally. So I always have a concern that like I will say something inappropriate when it comes off the top of my head. And there have been a couple of moments where I've felt like there were things that I've said that, if detected or sort of looked into, would be considered to not be appropriate, whether by cultural or sort of other social standards. So the vast majority of these haven't been picked up. Every now and then, like something's like, I get a response from like one person on Twitter. They like point out that I said something, and I'm like, I'm like, yeah, I could see I could be construed that way. I'm not American, but I could see how you would feel that way. So I think my favorite prepared line was probably, I wanted to make a Trump joke. I wanted just to break the ice, like on broadcast. So Poco hits a 4K bomb in like week 2 of stage 1, and I've just screamed out, Poco's got a button on his desk and it's bigger than yours.
I remember that.
Yeah, and I'm like, all right, we've got our political jokes out of the way this season. Because he hit a fat self-destruct, right? I'm like, it's, you know what I mean. So, you know, and after that, I was like, okay, yeah, we can leave that.
Yeah, you'll never feel the temptation again.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember you got a bunch of flack for like one of the fans like screaming in the stands or something, because you said you like pointed out that there was a fan like screaming for Raucous or something. There was something.
Oh no, yeah. So like I'm on pretty good terms with that particular group of people because generally speaking, like I sort of encourage people to enjoy. Unfortunately, and sometimes like because I hear the screaming too. Like I have the audience come back into my headset.
Yeah.
So I made a comment where I noted that the audience sounded similar to a One Direction concert.
Yeah. Yep.
And what perhaps I wasn't aware of, was that this was construed as offensively. I think people made it a gender issue. A little bit disappointing. I've been to a One Direction concert before, by the way. It was with my girlfriend, in all fairness, at the time. But, you know, and like my initial response to this person on Twitter was like, well, you know, like I didn't really think of it to be sort of slated in a gender fashion, but a lot of people felt the need to vehemently educate me about the like inappropriateness of the statement. And I'm like, I wasn't having it, and I had a bunch of tweets. I'm like, I eat so much shit from you fans all the time, like for just the most innocuous things. Like I'm not having it. I'm sorry. Like I'm not going to be. I said like I'm not the paragon of Blizzard's sort of value system.
Yeah.
I'm not their spokesperson. Like I'm literally not their spokesperson. I'm a contractor. I come in here. I'm like, I think there are a lot of fans that came into the Overwatch League who wanted to sort of impose their idea of how they wanted to enjoy it. So like, don't teabag, don't have any BM at all. You know, like. I'm like, well, okay, that's fine. Like, but we also have like the hardcore sort of gamers, right? Which is, you know, people are, oh yeah, like you mean the fucking neckbeards that sit in their, you know, basements, you know, things were worse before like these kind of people came in. I'm like, okay, fair enough. I understand. Like back in the old hardcore days of gaming, like there are a lot of problems that were not addressed. Whether it was in terms of discrimination or culturally, and I totally agree with that. And I think we do need to move forward. But we have like it's a clash between two very different types of fans right now. Those that love that sort of BM stuff and those that came across from Korean Stan Tumblr and like maybe just they love the game, and Blizzard really has spoken to them with this title, and they feel like they're represented as people, you know, in the characters, in the players, and in these stories. And I think that's just so fantastic. But there's like two very different ideas of how things should be conducted. And I meant nothing with that statement that I was saying. Like, it literally was a group of girls that were doing a lot of screaming. Now, did I intend to highlight them or denigrate them based on their gender? No, I was literally trying to make a sort of an offhand comment. And on that day, I had enough of it, because I was like, I feel like, I mean, it's the same old adage, right? I'm all about inclusiveness, and I think like we're doing such great things with the Overwatch League, and the team's doing incredible stuff around it. And I will admit that I'm woefully, embarrassingly undereducated in a lot of social issues that affect people not only globally but also in the United States. And as a result, I try and avoid those as much as I possibly can. But there is a limit for me in what's reasonable and what isn't. And I think that day we crossed that line.
There's got to be a middle ground. Like maybe Jake can crouch whenever he wants to, but we don't need Prophet giving the bird to the camera or stuff like that. There's got to be somewhere in the middle we can all meet. I would like.
Yeah, and also, like if you've ever been to a rival like football game, like you will literally get beer thrown on you and like called the worst of all possible things at all times, regardless of anything. It's an equal opportunity.
Blevins, it was one time. We went to one game together. You're not gonna bring it up.
We didn't even go to a game. You literally screamed out the window at Gillette Stadium when we passed it.
I may or may not have done that. and yelled at everybody I saw wearing a Patriots logo anywhere while we were in Boston at PAX.
Yeah,
I would have done the same too, to be honest.
Well, you know,
Those
if the
guys did.
Patriots don't want me to hate them, they shouldn't cheat so much. That's all. That's all I'll
okay,
say.
let's not go down that rabbit hole. Let's talk about something a little bit less screamy, or maybe more screamy. I don't know. So, I know that we actually have a dedicated channel of favorite moments of yours, Uber. But what was your favorite on-air moment from season 1?
There were a couple. I think like one of my favorites was when Prophet just got that 5K, I think, against Philly in that final match. And I didn't actually say this sort of on air or mention it, but the camera cut from, because we went on camera, right? But there was actually a camera on the casters that lost this footage, but I was literally casting on my knees. I was on my knees at the time. I actually didn't know what happened because I think I was just so taken aback by the play, and so I ended up like on my knees, and people in the crowd were like, "The fuck is up?" Well, actually, no, most of them were too busy like freaking out in much the same way. But I had a physical response to what I actually saw on the screen, and Matt looked at me like for the first time in his life, looking down at me like, "What the heck is going on in his box?" Yeah. So I think that was great. I think we had just fantastic moments. We saw some great moments from walkouts and from the Rocky walkout from Snillo, and Shanghai Dragons getting very close to winning that game against Florida, and everyone got excited about that, even though we're celebrating mediocrity there. But yeah, that's fine. There were plenty of things like that I loved. So like tons of really cool memories. Talent Takedown was a lot of fun. Outside of the game itself, so yeah.
What about at the grand finals when Malik was introducing DJ Khaled, and you literally lost your composure right before they sent it up?
We'd been joking about it the whole time. He's like, because obviously like we tweeted about like the fact that the guy wouldn't perform such an act, like we found quite ridiculous and very funny. So when he introduced him by saying it's about to go down, were you ready for that? Did he mention he was gonna? He's like, hey, guys, just be ready, or was it just a completely off? Kind of. Specifically, me and him specifically been bantering a lot about it over the course of the weekend because it seemed to offend us the most. But I think like no, he didn't really warn me, and that's why I was like, I just looked like. What do people think now that I've laughed at that? Like, I think it's a joke that we've got him here, or which it was. But I mean, like, how is my reaction going to be construed? Luckily, most people got the joke, I think. But like, yeah, it was an unfortunate moment when you kind of want to try and maintain. I think the joke is maybe stronger if you maintain your. I just couldn't do it. I was in this arena of people, and I was like, "This is just the funniest thing I've heard all day."
Your tweet on the subject was as spot on as it possibly could be.
I didn't even know about that until like he tweeted. I'm like, "Wow, this guy's he must be talking shit." But apparently, that was a true thing that people who have too much money do. So, when in doubt, make a joke about it.
For sure. What about off-air moments? I know the casters, you guys hang out a lot. Are there anything notable that happened maybe off camera that was memorable?
We have a lot of super funny moments. Generally, anything involving brand sideshow, barbecue scenario is great. Puckett makes a great steak, so we spend a lot of time on his rooftop, sort of barbecuing, and the antics that those guys have gotten up to are ridiculous. We spent a lot of time at Guildhall as well, which is obviously the local bar here in LA, to the point where I've probably had to say to myself, Brendan Sideshow, like, we probably shouldn't be seen completely intoxicated in this place all the time, because people are going to know that, like, if they filmed you doing what you're trying to do to that table right now, Brendan, you're probably going to get in trouble. So there are a lot of those. One of my favorites was we went to the Philadelphia Fusion House for the Super Bowl, and it was so much fun. We were like jumping in the pool, like I'm pretty sure like I'm just shoving boombox like off the ledge into the water, like there was drones flying around. We were playing ping pong and stuff. A lot of those wholesome moments. I think a lot of our most ridiculous antics actually happen on camera, to be honest. I think everyone's a little bit more relaxed in real life, but the camaraderie has been great with those guys.
That's awesome. Shifting focus a little bit more to the team side, which I mean, there's a lot of expectations for some teams, maybe not so much for others. But what team surprised you the most, either positively or negatively, in this first season?
Well, I think a lot of my thoughts are pretty similar to a lot in terms of like the good surprises were obviously like Boston,
Mhm.
you know, turning out to be a stronger team than they were. I didn't have huge expectations. I think a lot of people had like really high expectations of the Fuel.
Mhm.
I had concerns still.
Mhm.
I didn't think they'd be quite as bad as they were. Obviously, Seoul was a huge disappointment.
Mhm.
I don't know why. Like it just seemed to me like they didn't care. I think that
Mhm.
was just the communication and the language barrier,
Mhm.
because it's just really hard. Because obviously they're going to give you like the most polite answers, but when they're up there like in their like fancy shoes doing a special pose for a shot of their shoes when they're like not even making playoffs and they're about to lose to another really low team, I'm just saying to myself like, what is this a marketing exercise? Or and that's the old fashioned like gamer in me, like, why are we fucking about here? Like, you guys have just been wasting my time. Like, one of my least favorite games was honestly a Shanghai versus Seoul game where both teams I thought played really badly. Like every team fight, like it was one-sided and it was just very poor. And after it, and I was in stage 1 and I said like, this is not what we wanted, you know what
Right.
I mean? I think in terms of other teams, I think Philly impressed me just because they missed the preseason. I didn't know what to expect from them. I was already kind of rooting for them because of the people that were on the team. But they showed a lot of depth, a lot more depth than I thought they would have. And, you know, Fraggy gave them a good initial impetus, and then that definitely sort of fizzled out somewhat, but they were able to replace that, you know, when Sato joined the roster. I thought EQO was, you know, one of my favorite debuts of the season. My favorite thing about Overwatch League is just how many like sick 18, 19-year-old players are there, like just these nutty talents that are just, you know, like far more mature than I'll be in another 10 years, you know, like guys like Super, you know, Space, EQO, like these guys are just like super switched on. And I think to myself, man, if I had my shit together at that age, I could have done so much more with my life than I have. Like whatever that may be, right? So that was one of my favorite things to see, like, especially in North America, there's some very impressive young talent that are cropping up.
Well, now we want to take a look at the future here a little bit, go beyond season 1 and look at the, you know, the upcoming seasons. And we're curious now. There's a question coming up later about this a little bit as well, but can you tell us your plans for Overwatch moving forward? Are you going to be Overwatch League only, or are you going to be doing any additional content, things like that?
Overwatch takes up enough of my time as it is, to be honest. Like I can hardly, like, during the hour season, even trying to watch contenders is borderline impossible. Like trying to watch like 3-4 reaches of contenders. Like, I mean, no, I couldn't watch South American contenders while I was trying to catch up with, like, I was trying to watch NA contenders. That was hard enough as it was. There's just so much to do right now. So that's good. I think the biggest reason that people would move on is because there's not enough of a challenge. I have great expectations or that there will be further challenges set next year. And that's what's most important for me. If I start to feel like I have a habit in life, I think if I start to get complacent or feel like I'm backsliding, I just like hit the reset button and go and do something else. And that happened when I moved from Australia. That happened when I moved from Germany to come here. So it really is on me to a great degree. But I'll probably just stick with Overwatch for the time being, because I think it provides enough of a challenge to really keep me engaged in improving. I think as time goes on, like I definitely need to start thinking about like developing some of my other skills outside of casting, because I really have just become a one trick, to be honest. I'm terrible at social media, as we evidenced with that tweet that we talked about earlier on. I'm terrible with content creation and use of use of those social media stuff, and I find it very difficult to be able to stream consistently without like just getting very tired. So there are a lot of those things like I'd like to sort of work on outside of casting, which is what I'll use these next few months for. But there are a lot of great esports out there. I miss CS a lot, mostly because of the people that sort of I worked with. But I see no sort of immediate reason to think about anything else. I think I'm in like a very good spot. And it's the game that I want to cast, which for not all casters can say that. I think that's really important.
Well, recently you were flown out to accept an award that you had won. And congratulations on that, by the way. But I was wondering if you could maybe fill in our listeners, tell us what the award was and what it meant to you to win that.
Yeah, sure. So DreamHack are trying to put together their own sort of version of setup, which I thought outside of the broadcast, at the very least, sort of came together quite well. The award was On-Camera Talent of the Year, which is very broad, in all fairness. Super broad kind of award. And they had a judging panel that included like a lot of people very senior in esports and sort of, and you know, worked for a bunch of different TOs. So, yeah, I guess the premise was that if you're on camera and you have any talent, I don't know how I qualified, but then you will, then you're sort of up for the awards. So I was up against Chad Burchill or Sponge from Counter-Strike, obviously Alex Machine Richardson from Counter-Strike, Shiva from Dota, and there was one more, Monte Cristo. Yes, Monte Cristo. So anyway, so it was us, which is great, and also means absolutely nothing at the same time. It means absolutely nothing because, well, like I think it does. I think it does in the grand scheme of things because you're being judged to be a top talent by, you know, people that I respected in the industry who are on this panel. But the moment I let this mean anything to me is the moment that my rate of improvement dips drastically. So half of me wanted to get up and accept the award and say, I am very pleased to accept this extra 5 kilograms on my cabin luggage. Thank you. It's a block of glass. It's like very fancy and all that stuff. It's just like, and like they gave it to me in a Pelican case. Something about airports and Pelican cases and carry-on luggage like don't really mesh that well in this day and age. So getting that through like security was nutty. But yeah, so look, genuinely honored to win the award. Like I think thinking that you're, you know, doing well in your career and sort of having people that you respect a lot also say the same thing means a huge amount. And so for me, you know, we'll see. Maybe I'll just wave it under Blizzard's nose and be like, "Yes, so that contract." But at the end, like,
yeah, just sit on the other end of the table, just slam it on the table, and just kick it back.
Yeah, exactly. We use it like a meat tenderizer.
Yeah.
But I mean, look. I'm super jazzed about it. I didn't expect to win. Honestly, I wasn't almost not wanting to win anything this year because this was a building year for me personally in terms of casting. So sometimes if you win an award and you're just trying to sort of focus on the grind and building up, it can take your attention away from what's most important. But now I just want to win them all. I just want to be like the most awarded guy. I'm just like, they'll give me the awards. Like, now, I mean, it's a nice way of, you know, providing motivation to carry on. I really do want to be the best. You know, and as far as the awards go, to catch them is my real test. To train them is my cause. Give me your trophies.
Now, if so, you're chasing the best. Who do you think the best is right now in esports as far as casting goes?
So as far as like play-by-play casters, there are many like really technically talented play-by-play casters. Like Sadokist is like just very technically skilled. If you give Machine a mic, he's also incredibly good. Pansy is very, very good. Working with PUBG. I think like my idols are becoming my rivals very rapidly, which is really good. As far as like color casters go, there are really good ones. I think Monty still does a very good job of that. Matt is deceptively skilled in his role, and people don't realize because he's able to do what Monty does, except he delivers Monty's information, but in a way that's I think a certain kind of person will digest a lot easier because he's literally saying the same thing. He just doesn't require a thesaurus to sort of say it, which is you know, because of his own limitation in that regard. But so you know, it's for like hosts and stuff like that. I think Counter-Strike still has the best talent, but we are very close. I would say if we haven't already caught them, we're right there. So and obviously League of Legends has a lot of great casters as well.
Just wanted to make sure I was helping you keep your eye on the people above you or whatever, you know, the improvement. Talking a lot about how good you are and the things you won. So, all right. So the last one here for me before I send back to Blevins again. What do you think the odds are of an Australian city entering the Overwatch League at some point, and when do you think it would happen?
This year, 0%. Next year, 25%. The year after that, far more likely. I would say, okay, so obviously it's quite clear to see that Blizzard's expansion schedule for the Overwatch League not at all based on the performance of particular regions because they've added all these Chinese teams. So by process of elimination, one would suggest that it's very much a financial decision based on strength of market. And obviously the Chinese market is really strong. The Australian market will remain a very small piece of the global market for Overwatch. Will they get a spot? Absolutely. Obviously, it's not going to happen this year. I'd be surprised if it happened next year, to be perfectly honest with you. It really depends how ambitious they're wanting to roll out. I think they really start to focus much more on Europe, you know, maybe a little bit of Southeast Asia. But like, what's it going to be? Like an Australian team that lives in Burbank and they're called an Australian team, but they're, you know, it might just be like the same dilemma you have on the Spitfire, right? That, you know, Australia might have representation. If you're asking, will it have a team of 6 players? I don't think Australia will ever enter the Overwatch League with 6 Australian or New Zealand players. I doubt it, at least. And I think the scene is far enough behind that would be like a bad idea anyway.
I think China showed that for us in season.
I think that's safe to say.
For sure. Wanted to talk a little bit about the talent takedown, which I know you were just so pumped, just so absolutely pumped and happy about. But as we talked about in the pre-show, but going into that talent takedown, what was your team plan? What did you guys think was going to happen in that? How did you think that was going to play out?
We knew the premise of the whole exercise for us is that if we do not put effort into this, Johnny will just clap us. And if we do put effort into this, Johnny might still clap us, but we still have a chance. That would actually give us a chance. The problem with this approach is that you then render your team incapable of really having fun with the whole process because you're trying. So, I mean, there was only one pro player to go around. I understand the teams got drafted the way they did, but you know, there were thousands of hours between the rest of us and Johnny. We were fortunate, I think. Like, also worth pointing out, they had Crumbs, who has a lot of LCS on stage experience, so he was never going to get rattled. Brennan Sideshow came in and a lot of passion, but I saw them when they got on that stage, and it was not something that they were used to. I could see it in their eyes when we played. So the idea was to come in and play, like, you know, try and have a few different comps. We played a lot. We played a lot in practice because I knew we need to. If we weren't going to be more than the sum of our parts, then Johnny was going to beat us on his own, pure and simple. So we didn't. I think when you go into a game, and I think a lot of pro players will tell you this, even though I'm not one of them, is that if you don't really like expect to win or believe you can win, then like there's just no point in getting out there. So I think we internalized the idea of, you know, we would have to work hard to have a chance, and then we believed that we had a chance, and I still believe we do. And they played a rematch on stream, and you could sort of see how a couple of tweaks, you know, put the results more in the Atlantic team's favor. But yeah, it didn't quite go the way we would have liked.
Now, you guys obviously did play that that off stream or the, you know, off camera rematch. What would you have changed about your prep or maybe mindset going into another one, maybe next year, or if there was another televised one, essentially?
It's a tough one. I was relatively happy about. It's hard to know how to prep well. Like, you can prep and spend a lot of time prepping, but I think I would have tried to prep a little bit more for what we currently, what is strong in the meta. I think we just we completely neglected Hammond as an option. And unfortunately, that was actually the single thing that was able to sort of dismantle us. I really, like, it's tough to talk about because I don't like taking credit away from them, but a part of me also believes that, like, members of their team earned far more credit than they deserved. As someone who was playing the game and could see exactly, you know, where I could push and pull, you know, some of their players, and where I just had no leeway whatsoever. Having a player that was functioning as an initiator and a shot caller and a main tank gives you a huge amount of freedom to essentially just play however you sort of like. So having Johnny in our backline constantly was very bad. And I obviously felt very helpless at a few moments playing Reinhardt, because I played it. If you remember King's Row, you know, especially on attack, they were playing Doomfist, Hammond, and Brigitte, and I was playing Reinhardt. And basically, Johnny would put himself in our backline, and at that point, they have to be able to deal with Johnny. I have to trust them to do that. If I turn my back, Monty tries to shatter us. So I have to stand here. I literally have to stand here while our backline is getting wrecked 1v5 by Johnny, and then Johnny just gets out. I'm like, well, everyone's like, I need healing. I'm like, I'm still standing there holding the shield. Like there was one point I remember I was contesting the payload. There was like 3 of them were behind me, and it was me, with just me with my shield, Monty and his 2 supports. And Monty just stood there. He wouldn't move forward. He's a passive player by nature, but he just stood there. And I'm like, Monty, you have 2 supports with you, and you are standing still. And I am walking up to you every now and then, hitting you for free charge. And why are you not doing it? So it occurred to me that, while I still definitely take a lot of blame for a lot of things that happened, like the amount of earth shatters that I queued up, and then all of a sudden found myself upside down in the air, was like, we really should have just tried to play a mirror comp against them or something like that. But Johnny was far too good.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a player pick ban phase at some point, maybe.
I think yeah. I mean, especially Johnny, it wasn't just analyst S Johnny, grinding 100 hours a week for World Cup Johnny. It was like, I'm like living, eating, sleeping, breathing Overwatch. And he walked in there like it doesn't matter, but he would have hated to lose that game because it would look really badly on him. So he had to try it. But he also at the same time couldn't say that he was trying against us. You know what I mean? So he was in a bit of a snafu himself, but he didn't have to try. He was obviously good enough to handle all of this. So.
Okay, last question about the talent takedown. And speaking of giving perhaps undue credit, though from the fan perspective, it didn't seem like undue. Did anyone in that arena know how deadly Semler's Diva was?
What part about Semler's Ziva was deadly except him pressing Q and me not shielding my team?
I mean,
this is what
exactly that part.
August, I fed you that MVP on a silver fucking platter, bro. I've seen all the clips. I've seen literally all the clips, and people are like, there was one clip where I was fucked anyway, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, he wasn't threatening our backline by diving us. He wasn't necessarily peeling that great. We were so was getting farmed over and over again. Like he was literally pressing Q. And this is why it's so interesting to see now our perception of players in their games, and then their actual perception of what happened. Because I remember them. I've seen the clips. It's like me standing there with a shield. The rest of my team is off. Johnny's pushed them out so far, and I have to sort of keep my shield out. They were separated. And I'm and people there was one when me and my team were separated and I didn't shield the Diva ult and died. And they're like, why didn't you shield the Diva ult and at least keep yourself alive? And I'm sitting there like, do you not understand that if I just fucking stay alive on my own and get 6 up to get Diva bombed, that I'm staggering my fucking, for my team? There was no point in me trying to shield the fucking Diva bomb. I was supposed to die. I'm like, how are you people so dumb? And I realized, this is plat chat.
I was just gonna say, I got 2 words: plat chat.
So I mean, and obviously, I know it was sorry that won MVP, not Semler. Which and I kind of agree with that because Semler came in and then just hit some fat Diva bombs that no one tried to block. I'm like, okay, great, that's so sick, man. But there were definitely, I don't necessarily think that garnered an MVP honor for him. It was definitely a case of and you got to look at it through that lens when it is us bots trying to play. Is that we ate that. Yeah.
Definitely shows just how important the flashy plays are for the fan. Fan perception for sure. But we want to shift over here. That's all that we have, but we do have a bunch of questions here from Discord, and we'll jump over those in a second. If you guys are watching live in Twitch chat, get your questions in now. I will be collecting those while Deathblow asks some Discord questions.
Sure. So the first one here comes from Shrugoff. He wants to know what the transition was like going from working with Jason Kaplan over to Matt, Mr. X. And will we ever see you and JCap casting Overwatch again?
Well, Matt and Jason completely different people. Jason's pretty high strung and fairly sort of alert a lot of the time, and Matt is very relaxed, sort of plays things down a lot. I think Matt was probably a better influence on me as a person, sort of growing out of the culture that I sort of lived in Germany. Matt is not the kind of guy that's going to try and take control of things. And so I had to sort of early on, I really had to put effort into open up dialogue between us so I could sort of know how he really felt about things, you know, whether things he liked things or he didn't like them. Matt is like very careful about sort of giving unsolicited advice or anything like that. So obviously the result of that means that he'll accommodate me completely. And then I won't realize that I'm not accommodating him actually at all. And that he was just sort of, working around me, which is not something I wanted in our pairing. So it took us a while to sort of get to the point where, you know, I maybe could be fully honest with each other. And like Matt could say to me like, hey, like I need more space, or, you know, he could tell me what he needed. You know, initially he came in like, oh, don't worry about it. You just do your thing and I'll just back you up. And obviously that's not like a really recipe for success, but it did allow us to hit the ground running. With Jason, like it was probably a little bit easier to have those conversations, but I knew Jason sort of much better. Now I know obviously Matt quite well as a person. Jason was easier to read for me, I think, because he was slightly more of a similar person I was. So for Matt, I was like, are you really happy with this? So I don't quite get where you're going. Matt is definitely more supportive, and with Matt, I can really have just like a really relaxed conversation with him. As Jason, me and Jason were always really high intensity, which was super fun and like brings a hype. But after a while, it can be sort of exhausting. Then again, like I never had the chance to do like a league scenario like Jason, so like we never got those consistent reps in. But you know, with Matt, it's been really good. Will I cast Overwatch with Jason ever again? It's possible, but it wouldn't be in an official capacity, I don't think. Yeah.
Sure. Next one here is from Liam H91. He said, what is your personal favorite line for casting an Overwatch League for yourself, and maybe your favorite line from one of your colleagues?
I think I can maybe give my favorite line from that I've heard in casting, maybe, or does he want like an Overwatch League one?
Someone else. So you answer it however you interpret it.
Mine was probably the Poco button one, just because I managed to execute on a really bad joke and get away with it.
Those are always the best.
One of my favorite calls ever is Sadakist's Snacks is in the Big Apple and he's hungry, when like Snacks from Vers Pro is just like having like the most insane game of his life, and I think he gets like a 4K in that play. That was really good. So Doa's style is not necessarily to go for those sort of pithy lines, but obviously to generate humor with some really good lighthearted banter. Doa sort of doesn't go for a similar style. I think the Wayne Gretzky, I don't know if you remember that day where they were just like making Wayne Gretzky jokes all day, or like misquoting people and attributing it to Wayne Gretzky. I was like, that was super funny. I think I'm kind of the only one that goes for the true cheesy stuff, right? Like the quotable quotes. So when I listen to the other casters, maybe I don't pick them up so much, you know, because they're super different to me. Like the other play-by-play guys, super different to me in terms of our casting. There was one funny broadcast where Semler and Hex dropped the F-bomb within 24 hours of each other on 2 consecutive days. Oh, it's like this now, is it? All right.
All right, another question here from Shy Guy. What is your mentality like during a match? Are you actively trying to focus on specific aspects of the cast? Are you trying to recall details about teams or players, or just letting your preparation take over and going off the?
You have to do it naturally, because if you don't, then like you don't have enough time to have a life in league stuff. Like your prep is the day before and the day before and the week before and the month before of casting the Overwatch League. You might come in and you might double check a couple of stats. A lot of statistics are fed to us. The details we should know, like because we live and breathe this stuff. Like me and Matt, on the way to work in the car, we talk about Overwatch. We come to work, we talk about Overwatch. On the way home from work, we talk about Overwatch. It is, you know, it's in our very sort of recent memory recall. It's sort of available to us there because we're so immersed in it. When I cast, I definitely come in with a couple of things to sort of improve on. Sometimes I just, again, you know, we talked about before, I'm trying to recreate those really good casts and trying to distill down what the elements were that allowed me to sort of to produce that performance. So I'm thinking about that all the time, like trying to like, should I stand up? Should I sit down? Like, do I bring a water bottle in here? Do I need to have tea at halftime? So I think about a bunch of that stuff, but generally it's about trying to keep my attention span long and keep my energy up, but also making sure that I'm noticing the little things. I really look for the little things a lot with my play-by-play, and I try to like give a lot of variety of what's happening in a fight.
All right, got a question here from Gas Roll. It's a bit of a business end question, but how is the Overwatch League Talent contracted? I don't think it's consistent between all of you guys from what we've been able to glean so far, but are you a Blizzard employee? Are you a 1099, an independent contractor? Is there an exclusivity agreement, stuff like that?
So I can probably talk about a fair bit of this stuff. I'm really under NDA, but I am not a Blizzard employee. None of us, except for Zoe. So, and because she was employed before the Overwatch League stuff kicked up. Some of the guys are MLG employees, and obviously MLG is part of Activision, Blizzard Activision, but they all sort of moved to being contractors. The way this works for me, I don't believe I can legally be a 1099 contractor without an American citizenship or at least a green card or something similar like that. So I couldn't just come here and be a freelancer. It doesn't work like that. I have a visa. Basically, it's called an O1 visa, and it is for people of extraordinary ability. And basically, you just need to prove that they can't find someone like you locally, which lasts for a few years. Yeah,
we've been looking.
Yeah, and basically, so I work not for Blizzard, but I work for an outsourcing company. So I don't work for Blizzard, and the reason for that is that keeping a bit of separation between me and Blizzard itself is quite important. It allows me to do my job. It allows me to not just be a sellout, shill for Blizzard, which is really important, which is why I can have these kind of conversations with you guys, which is why I can tell you things like, X was a joke or Y was not good or whatever. So we all wanted that.
So that's that's your choice to do that, or of your volition to do that.
Yes, although I believe it's of mutual benefit, to be honest, because let's say in the first year of the Overwatch League, Blizzard don't really know what it's going to be or if it's going to work out. And once you're in the Blizzard system, you kind of, it's very difficult to sort of get you out of it. It's not like they're saying that they want to fire us, but they'd hire us to broadcast their league. And then if the Overwatch League didn't work out, then we're Blizzard employees. But do we have necessarily qualifications that would make us useful in any other position? Why would they keep us employed, right? And to sort of to let us go legally is actually quite difficult, I believe. So it's all about boards. So I opted for an outsourcing company that sort of contracts me. Blizzard contracts their services, which includes me and a couple of other casters who work for this company. And this is very common when we have companies like Microsoft and others that require experts, whether it's comp sci guys or engineers from out of the country who need to be able to live here. So basically, I get paid not by Blizzard, but by this outsourcing company, and so there's sort of a contract there, and I would not say that no, none of us are fully exclusive in that sense. I don't believe. I can only speak for myself here. So, if I want to go out and do something, it is something that I sort of, make Blizzard aware of that, especially in the case of if there's any clash as well. If it's other FPS or MOBA games, it's kind of it really depends on, what it is. Do they want me going off and casting a Counter-Strike major? Probably not. And I said, well, that's fine as long as you give me enough work in the internet. As long as there's enough to do, it's fine. And so far, that's not been an issue. So, we can do the public podcasts and shows, and it's taken a while because we've had to work with their PR guys and sort of we had to alert them and let them know about stuff, and obviously they want to brief us on things that are not appropriate to discuss and some that aren't. And
what are some of those things that you're not supposed to discuss?
It got a little bit murky for when. It was something like this is a great example. This used to be murky because it was it's a personal interview about me, but obviously Blizzard is going to come up. Now PR has made it very clear to us casters that we're not spokespeople for the league, and that's also fine for us. We are our own spokespeople. But obviously that's the gray area where it's I'm just talking about me, but also you're talking about my job, and that's where PR is well, So we worked through that. I have to admit, I've always found working with PR very difficult. Especially being an Australian, and also I can talk a lot of shit. So, but we're in a good spot here. It's new ground that we're breaking. But yeah, that's how the setup is. So it works really quite well. It means I can stay in this country. It means I have access to social security and stuff like that. Insurance, if your outsourcing company offers that to you, then you have access to those benefits. Some outsourcing companies don't do that.
Gotcha. And just a note for Gasroll, he specifically asked a little bit about like Captain Planet not being able to continue his podcast, stuff like that. He is a Blizzard employee.
Yeah.
So that's why the difference is there with him as opposed to everybody else. And one last one here as far as Discord goes from Wild Thane, another Buffalo guy, so shout outs to him for sure. What is your favorite current matchup or team composition to cast? There was a lot of talk about how much everybody, I think, in the world hated the Mercy meta, and the impact that had on the spectator experience. I'm just going to come out and say it. I think he wants you to say Brigitte is no fun. But is there anything going on currently in the game that you really, really enjoy casting that maybe hasn't been around before?
Well, I'm a Reinhardt main, so you don't need to convince me. I mean, Doomfist is also no fun. Hammond is also
he's fun to watch though.
Fast.
Yeah, but what about as casting? Does that carry over?
My favorite meta was to cast because it gave me a lot of those moments. I wish when McCree was viable, to be honest, which was like there were like a couple very small snapshots when he was played. I liked when like Roadhog Orisa started sort of being picked up a little bit more when compositions were based around shield pressure and generating picks. So there were a couple of times in the Overwatch League, when we got to see Fletter, really shine, when we really started to see these Widowmakers coming to the light. That was my favorite. The least favorite, I as annoying as like Brigitte can be, and obviously Sombra right now is at a weird spot. It's a bit weird. I think Goats is very difficult to cast. Goats is very difficult to stay in touch with and to predict things because there's burst healing now. Goats with Ana as well makes it a little bit more complicated because the Bionade can end a fight, but it can also prolong it greatly with Nano Boost. So I don't love that. I'll be honest. And because even if you get a first pick, like it might not matter. It depends who you pick up. So this current meta is difficult. I think with like Doomfist Sombra is interesting. That could be a lot of fun, but with those particular heroes, like if you get EMP'd, like you just get smacked really quickly and the fight ends. Like I like a more drawn out fight where it comes down to like maybe, like the best fights I've ever cast, like when they come down to like 2v2s and stuff like that, or 1v1s, but they never do that because the game is so snowballing in team fights. That first pick decides so much that rarely do you ever get those 2v2 moments, and the moments that I've seen are like that are just incredible.
I love the McCree cleaning up a fight as he like combat rolls around to reload and just kind of does everything perfectly. Like those are always some of the most fun moments to me as a spectator.
Yep. All right, we're gonna start winding down here and jump over to Twitch chat. So, guys, last chance to get your questions and comments in for Uber. So get those in. First one here was from a little while ago, but from our good friend Bare Hands. He wanted to mention that when you were talking about interstellar colonization, it makes him feel a lot better about beating you in Twilight Imperium.
Yeah. Okay. All right. First of all, like he just sat in his same sector for the whole game like a bitch. I understand personally. I think he played the game correctly. There's no doubt about that. But I was too busy just trying to hit Monty in the face every chance I could. I was like chasing him around the map, like I'm coming for you, boy. But basically, he played the game right, which was kind of don't do anything until you sort of set yourself up to win. I wasn't about that life. I wasn't about that life.
I know those 4X games and those like resource building and exploration games are very much like, oh, I'm going to sit here and build up a ton of resources and have an unsurmountable army. And like 5 hours later, congratulations, you won the game. I don't care. That's not fun.
I was trying to, it was literally a 12-hour game.
Yeah, not surprised. I don't think I've played Twilight Imperium specifically, but I've seen people play those games across like the entirety of conventions. So yeah. We got a question here from Liam91. He said it didn't really come up in OWL because some bigger things happen around it, but do you think that the nerf to the Zenyatta right-click volley affected the performance of Zen and the playstyles of Zen?
Slightly, but not enough. It affected like a lot of the thing is like when you change the speed of a projectile, players will just adjust to leading it a bit more. Obviously, it can just mean that your window for connecting these shots is limited. But yeah, there was less sniping across the map for Zen. I think that was one of the biggest changes there. Zen's, as far as I could see, did not appear to suffer any more so in more the close quarter scenarios, because obviously that low travel speed is not. Once a player understands how to lead with this new speed, that wasn't a problem. But we weren't seeing too much like across the map pickoffs with Zenyatta, and I don't think I really hated that. It's just kind of an attribute that Zen had, which I don't know was necessarily intrinsic to his kit or his function. Because first picks end fights so quickly, right?
Right.
I was kind of, I don't mind if we actually get like a proper 6v6 more often.
Yeah, and when that first pick is not coming from your support player, that's probably a good thing. Scotland 666 asks a question that we were actually talking about in the pre-show. How confident are you in Team Australia this year?
As a dark horse team, yeah, relatively confident. They got the skill. It's just going to be a matter of if they can really develop like a very solid understanding about how to sort of execute strategies and win games at this level. But I think they can beat China personally. I don't see people have short memories. Like we almost beat Canada last year with the eventual like second place team. Like they had to reverse sweep us.
It really impressed me last year.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, the team is largely different, but like that level of skill is present. So what we need to see is if they can get their coordination on point. They've got Gunder's coaching them. Obviously, he was with the Valiant. RQT has now moved into more of a coaching position, a manager position with them as well. So like the old boys are still there. I'm pretty confident.
Nice. Yeah, it'd be nice to see them come back for BlizzCon too. Thornrain asks, Hoarder Alliance, and what are you maining in BFA?
Careful, Uber. Careful.
Yeah, I used to be an Alliance player actually, and all my friends are Alliance players. I'm a Horde player now. So I play El Brainless Demon Hunter. I just run around and dash and slash and try not to die to like random boss mechanics. So yeah.
Nice. I could never do that. And by that I mean not die to boss mechanics. High Noon asks, do you have any tips for starting casters?
Yeah, go follow @broadcast.gg on Twitter. The rest is pretty academic there. Like just get involved with the community and sort of see what they're doing on their Discord. Like they're doing crazy stuff. Now they're casting contenders for Brazil. Like they've been given all this stuff to do. So they just started taking off. Great resources for up and comers for sure.
Yeah, broadcast.gg, really good people. A lot of friends of the podcast on there as well. Let's see. We've got Polytosh asks, who is the best analyst between the casters in your opinion?
As in like, okay, that's a tricky one. Do you mean like the best like maybe analyst caster in amongst the pairs?
Who had I don't know.
However you interpret it.
Maybe like who do you think gives the most insightful analysis of?
So I think among the play-by-play casters, like the play-by-play casters we have, I'm definitely. I don't know. It's not really. It's pretty easy to win that one. I think that Hex and Matt get to similar levels, but I do think that Matt is probably the best actually at translating a lot of this stuff. Monty. It's a tough one. Monty's very, very good. But it's a style. I think Matt does the best job of doing it in a way that's accessible to people. Like Monty's the kind of guy that will go out and produce his half-an-hour analysis videos, and that will appeal to like the top 10%. But Matt really appeals to that other 90% with what he does. I think Matt's appeal is definitely, while maybe less academic in its tone or in its development, I think he's just doing an excellent job of like reaching people that otherwise, giving people a reason to care about the minutia.
Yeah, Matt does such a great job of that, but he just doesn't have the same biting condescension that Monty just naturally exudes.
Yeah, and it is natural. like for Monty, it's like Matt is just like, nah, I'm chill. Like, I don't really care about being the best or whatever. I'm just out here sick. Like this is what's happening. So
when I met Monty for the first time in real life in New York, I was just casually talking about how I got lost my first time in Brooklyn at 3 a.m. on the subway, and just immediately went into this whole diatribe about how like it's a grid system, and if you know that at 17th, 37th, and 63rd, like you can just navigate it. I'm just like, I was too dumb, man. I'm sorry.
He gave me the same. He gave me the same explanation when I questioned. Yeah, Monty's very passionate about stuff.
Yeah.
The thing is that like our audience is not the audience he used to have. The Overwatch League audience is not a CS audience. It's not even a League of Legends audience. Like our fan, like the vast majority of our Overwatch viewers don't care about analysis.
Yeah.
Yep. The vast, like I would say 80% do not care. And I would say most of them don't even care about the casting either. Like there are a lot of Overwatch fans now that players are not necessarily for the gameplay at all, which is fine, but it's just a very different approach. Like, it's I think it's been a little bit difficult for Monty because like a lot of analytical content doesn't get a lot of traction on our subreddits and stuff like that. Obviously on competitive Overwatch, I think that's where you get the snapshot of the more hardcore fans that are really interested in the minutiae of the game part. Sorry, so many of our fans are just not. I mean, it was on Disney XD. Like, what kind of 5-year-old? Like, old, you know what I mean?
Well, it's kind of like Overwatch League bringing that sort of like traditional sports appeal. Like, how many people that watch football every week like care about in-depth analysis? I'm sure a lot of them do, but like a lot of people have just been watching it since they could remember. Or
we got to think about that, like how that translates to analysis. Like, we want it to be super enjoyable for people as well. But so I'm trying to. One of my biggest challenges is understanding like the proportion of people, like what people want to see, and like on average, like I want to cater to the hardcore fans because I'm a hardcore Overwatch fan. That's like that is personally what I am. But I also want to make this enjoyable. Like if we're trying to be on Disney and ESPN, and if I have to wear on broadcast, then I guess like we have to think about this other group of people that we're trying to appeal to. So it's been a problem for ages in esports, like dumbing down, people getting mad that things are being dumbed down and stuff. But I want to ask Blizzard. I don't know if they even have this information about like what our viewership, like what the average rank is or something like that. But I would say it'd be pretty low.
Just got we're running out of time quickly here, so we're just going to probably ask one or two more. We got another one from Thornrain here. Do you think that Flower, now known as Nanohana, is still sought after as a player after his after he was the Overwatch World Cup like player of the Overwatch World Cup last year, and he kind of had a mediocre contenders performance?
Yeah, probably. The game has changed a lot since then, right? So teams will definitely give him that. Will they like pay him like top dollar and drag him onto their roster without a trial? Maybe not. It's like Widow's not even good right now, fam. He can play a heck of a lot of heroes, but it's also like how well he plays with us is super crucial. Which is why like Rascal's not on Dallas, for example, or as it was rumored to be. So I don't want to upset Rascal stands because we have stands now. So I think he was very good, but the game was so different back then, and everyone else was also, has he kept up? Has he stayed ahead? I doubt it. I can't, you can't stay ahead of the pack like that in contenders. But I mean, the guy's got talent for his age, so he definitely gets a look in. We need that young talent.
For sure. And last one here from Chaco. He says, what's the best way for a coach to move from contenders, or maybe just the tier 2 in general, up into the Overwatch League?
Quite good. So the question was like, well, how hard is that? Or
either how hard or what's the best way for a coach who's in
advice
tier 2?
For how to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, it depends. Like if you're in tier 2, obviously it's difficult to speak outside of your team's results. You see this also in Overwatch League. I think that some coaches are not credited when they deserve it, and sometimes they are credited when they don't deserve it, because it's really hard to see like how the coaching actually affects it. Like you've got Wizard Hyung telling you he's like a stable genius, and then his team doesn't even make it to New York, like in that interview. So you can like there are resources. Like if you're in touch with Blizzard staff that sort of work with contenders, like it is possible to sort of get connected or sort of be put yourself in a position where you would be recommended by them to move into an expansion franchise, for example. Like Kate Mitchell was announced as the GM of Washington DC. She's a tier 2. She's a contenders coach, or contenders manager actually. But all of a sudden she gets a call up. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
so you need to be able to network. You will come into contact with people that are affiliated and work for Blizzard while working in a tier 2 scene, especially if it's in contenders. So their networks you have to curate, because if you do an excellent job as a manager, or you display to Blizzard that you're very good at your job in tier 2, then they will absolutely want to put you forward. It's not to say that someone like Kate didn't do her own hustle on the side to get in touch with Atlanta, but or DC, but bro, I don't know how like anyone knows these people before it happens. Like I have so many friends also like that also always want like, oh, do you know who's involved in this? Like, who's actually running this franchise? It's been rumored. Like, that was back when, so Kate's been talking to the people from DC before they were even rumored to be announced, which means they have to have reached out to her.
Right.
That's how it works, right?
Yeah, it's all about who you know and getting out enough of or getting yourself out enough to make a good impression to those people. So
And real quick, the Dallas Fuel just hired somebody that kind of laid out a blueprint for another way to do it too, which is Jane. Just be on camera, putting out content, talking and breaking down footage and teaching people to get better at the game. That's a really big deal, just to make it without a doubt, in anybody's mind that you know what you're talking about, you know how the game works at a high level, and you can break down footage like that. That's, to me, it makes me want to root for Dallas a little bit. I can't even believe I just said that on camera, but just the fact that they brought him in, like, I've loved watching Jane grow as a content creator, things like that, and I think it's great to see him transition into coaching as well.
Yeah, the side word is just hustle. Like, if you're in tier 2 and you're asking how to get into Overwatch League as like a coach or something like that, you're doing it wrong. You shouldn't even have time to ask me. You should be just trying to find out and doing it.
Grind it. But Uber, that is going to bring us to the end. Thank you so much for being on the show. The floor is yours. Sell out, shout out, whatever you'd like, whatever you want to do. It's all you.
Cool. Shout out to the Overwatch League Talent crew. Love those guys. Done a great job this year. And keep voting me to an award so I can beat Monte Cristo. And that's really how it goes, right? I just want to keep taking awards off of him, and CS Talent as well. But yeah, no, just like, thanks for the support throughout the year. I haven't really had a chance to address the community at all. So, from day one, like, everyone's been super supportive. Thanks for all your messages, tweets coming in, and to help us sort of stay motivated and stay on track. And yeah, we've enjoyed it a bunch too. You can follow me on Twitter. I don't recommend it if you're a stan, but you can try it.
All right, Uber, thank you so much again. We'll be in touch. But guys, that is going to be it for this episode here. Again, huge shout outs to Uber. But we'll see you guys next week on High Noon Podcast. And let us know what you thought. Bye-bye.